Hello and welcome. This is the session on building communication skills at home, and I'm Mike Miklos, who will be the presenter during this session. You ever notice people talk quite a bit? Humans are always engaging in a lot of verbal behavior, a lot of talking to one another. And there's good reasons for this. It's an important thing in life. It allows us to converse with one another, to socialize, to share our experiences, to tell others about the things that have brought joy and sadness to our lives. It really is an important way of people relating to one another. It also has other implications. The world around us, all of the technology that we use on a day-to-day basis, including this recording process, and also technologies such as the cars we drive, the houses we live in, the heating systems, the cooling systems, everything from pencils to any technology you can imagine is the result of people talking to one another, explaining to one another how they can build something, where the factory should go, how the product should be distributed. We humans would not be able to do all we do and all we're able to access in terms of healthcare and other benefits of social interaction without a clear way of communicating with one another. Our entertainment generally involves people talking to us. The lyrics to songs, the questions on a quiz show such as Jeopardy, all of this is the result of our ability to talk to one another. For me to say something and have it affect your behavior, it's something that is quite predominant among people. Our physical culture, our well-being depends on communication skills. This session is geared for parents, and with that said, I think that you are so important in your children's lives, and you have an opportunity to help them acquire effective skills related to communication with other people. I also will be making a point later on that the ability to communicate with other people establishes, to a certain extent, an individual's ability to talk to themselves. I think that if I paused for a second or two, during that pause, most of you were probably talking to yourself, saying, well, why did he pause? What's this pause for? Or other things. Do I have time to get up and leave my computer for a second? The pause allowed you to engage in a lot of talking to yourself. So learning to talk to others will help us build skills that eventually allow us to talk effectively to ourselves, which to a large extent may be what, not all, but a lot of what we call thinking involves, effective communication with ourselves. Well, one thing that has been pretty clearly established over years and years of study is the relationship between someone's verbal skills, their ability to communicate, that is, and outcomes in life. People who have developed clear ability to communicate with others generally enjoy a higher level of independent living. This is true for children with various disabilities, including autism, and it's true for individuals who may not fall into those categories. That the more verbal you are, the more independent you're going to be in general, meaning that you're going to be more employable. You're more likely to hold a job and stay at a job longer. Verbal skills go along quite directly with income level. It's been shown through correlation that those who have developed better ability to speak on average will generally have better paying jobs. Their income level will be higher. They generally achieve a higher level of educational attainment, and also are going to be lucky enough to have better health. And the reason for that should be clear, that those who can spend time reading about health and about taking care of oneself and talking to others about healthy habits in terms of diet, healthcare, dental care, and so forth, are likely to put into place those practices. And if you're unaware of all of that information that other people can tell you in communication, you're going to be worse off. So the nature of this session, the reason I think this session is so important is because I'm going to be talking about ways that you can build effective communication abilities in the children you love and care for. As I go, the first part of this presentation is going to be focused on how do you build communications in general for children who may be typically developing. The guidelines I provide in the first part of this presentation are very applicable to all children, including children with disabilities and including children who may have autism. I will then go on to later on in the presentation to provide some points and some information that may be helpful to you in providing specific interventions and specific ways of interacting with your child that will promote acquisition of language in children who may be harder to teach communication skills, namely children who present autism spectrum disorders or other disabilities. Now, as I go, I'm going to be working from a position that uses the typical definition of autism that has as one of its central defining characteristics differences in an individual's development of social communicative competencies, meaning that the way they interact with other people affects their ability to clearly communicate what they want or what they need, or to effectively control somebody who's listening to them in ways that are productive. The other aspect of autism that enters into this concern with language development is the tendency for many children with autism to engage in repetitive or stereotyped behaviors. The tendency to talk only about certain things and to not have a wide variety of interests or subjects that they will talk about. And that is a significant concern that also relates to language development. It's also a significant strength because sometimes being focused on a single thing allows you to learn a tremendous amount about that thing and to be able to do a lot with that information. However, for the most part, in terms of getting along with others, it can be problematic. I think that for many of us, it's difficult to talk to somebody who always says the same thing, or in conversation, every conversation comes around to the same topic. At any rate, these characteristics of autism that probably are related to some physiological origin, but certainly have relation to what children experience in their day-to-day lives. And I'm going to cover that as we go. Will create issues that will affect the child's functioning across the lifespan. The failure to interact with other people from the earliest ages and to be able to attend to what another person is doing can sort of set in motion a chain of events where less experience with effective communication occurs. And the child who has had less experience will then be in a circumstance that allows them less opportunity to develop further language. And the snowball of effective language acquisition may be blocked. So these specific kind of deficits in autism may create long-term issues that need to be worked around. Early on, a child may not look at the faces of other people. They may not monitor where somebody's eyes are looking as much. And that makes acquiring communication challenging because, it's been said the eyes are the window of the world. And that's basically implying that where we look tells us something to somebody else about what we're likely to do. That when I shift my gaze and I look down at the table that's next to me, the position my eyes are in helps you predict that I'm going to say something or do something in relation to the direction my eyes are looking. So if I'm going to tell you that something on my table is a phone, and you have never heard knew what a phone was before, the only way my saying phone is going to make a difference in your future saying phone is if you know when I say that I'm looking at the phone and nothing else that's on the table. That requires careful watching of somebody else's eyes. That is a skill that's often absent early on in children with autism. So I think that one of the important things about intervention from an early start is helping the child learn that attending to somebody's eyes is an important skill. Now, we can't do that by sort of like taking the child's face and pulling their face to look at your eyes. That won't work. I think that some people will do things like hold up a reward and say, look at me, and get the child to look because they're getting a reward. That's often not effective either because it's not the right consequence for looking at someone's face. I'll probably talk a little bit more about eye contact as we go, but what you want to do is make sure when the child looks at you that good things happen and that they learn that looking at the face tells the child that something good's going to happen. So if I had a favorite string that the child likes to play with, and I hold up the string and the child looks at the string, I may not move it or not give the string to the child at that point until they look at my face. When they look at my face, here's the string. Because what I am teaching is the child looking at my face predicts that something is going to happen. And for children who haven't learned that, it takes practice to do that. In the process, though, you don't want to use a lot of physical prompts or verbally telling the child to look at me, because those are not the right things that will control that response. You basically just want to wait for the child to look at you. When they look at you, yeah, you can have the string, so that your face and your smile becomes a message to the child that good things are going to happen. And they learn to look at your face to find out when that's going to happen, which, by the way, is why we typically look at children's faces. I'm not going to spend too much more time on that right now, but that failure to look at people's faces can have a significant impact on language development. And there are other sessions available through this conference this year, primarily by Ami Klen, that will talk about those issues, and I'd encourage you to watch them. You might find them interesting. As the child develops, this failure to look at and approach other people may lead to them not being able to take turns. And in conversing and talking with other people, that pause and that back and forth is an important skill that needs to be developed. Children with autism, due to these deficits, may not understand gestures, emotions, facial expressions. To get these skills developed, it takes practice. And this is why it is so critical to help children develop this ability to look at other people's faces and to have a good idea of what other people are doing, and to watch their faces and watch people as observers, so that observation leads to more effective interaction. Vocabulary is a big issue for many children with autism and other disabilities. If you don't talk much to other people, if you don't interact much with other people, you may not develop the ability to use as many words, as many verbal utterances to affect with other people. And generally, when things snowball, as I said before, you don't establish early language, it may indeed affect how successful you are. And generally, people don't do things very long that they're not successful at. That if talking to other people is correlated with them sort of forcing you to do stuff, or trying to get you to do something that's not in your skill set, it's going to be a problem, and children will avoid further language interactions, thus further delaying access or acquisition of language skills. I am necessarily, over the next couple hours, going to take an approach where I'm talking in somewhat general terms. I have been lucky in my life to work with thousands and thousands of children in my career. And what I have found, that children's experiences vary on an individual basis. What the child brings to the situation is different from one child to the next. And this is true for all children, and it is true for children with autism. Children with autism are changed by the world around them. They bring unique backgrounds into circumstances, so that as I'm talking in general about communication patterns, remember that all people are individuals first, including individuals with autism, and their pattern of learning will have shaped up different skills related to how they talk to other people and how they respond to language. So it seems like over the years, what I have learned that is when somebody tells me an individual has autism, it gives me an idea of what the child may be like, but it doesn't really predict what that individual will be like. I think we always have to be aware that and react in ways to people that allow us to judge the person on what they are doing and what they have, what they bring to the circumstance, and not on our preconceived notions. The big point here is that no two people with autism will fit exactly any of the patterns I'm talking about. With that said, I do want to emphasize, though, that we're all people, and people share certain commonalities. How we acquire language is a process of interaction with other people. That is universal. And I think that the ways in which other people respond to us universally shape up our language. For some children who may be prone to less interaction. It's going to be more of a challenge. For other children who are developing typically and who have learned early on that looking at somebody and interacting with them is so much fun, language is going to appear almost magically to those children, and the amount of direct teaching is not going to be that significant. For children with autism, I really believe that there is often a need for very intensive and direct services that spell out specific language acquisition programming that is focused on a understanding of the relation between what a child does and the circumstances under which they're doing it. So that, there are circumstances under which we use certain words, and understanding the regularities in how people respond when that word is to be used is important. And that's an optimistic approach to language intervention. It says that there are, or it implies that there are things that happen in the world that we could make regular that helps a child learn. So these ideas are all relative to the idea that children learn language in a social process by interacting with other people. And there's nobody more important that the child interacts with than those who they live with and spend the most time with, and who have, speaking in a funny cliche here, a pony in the race. Parents are committed to helping their children. You are so important in the development of your children's lives because you can structure things to help your child learn. You're with them so often. In these days of COVID-19, you may be with them a lot more than what you expected to be, which may provide some opportunities for you to be successful in helping them develop language. Not to minimize the challenges that these current circumstances have presented to all of us, but there are some things that may come out of this that are important. So, as I said, autism seems to interfere with that development of social skills related to attending to other people, and that may limit language skills. From the moment an infant is born, they begin interacting with other people. Right away, often the first thing a child does is they're born, there's a cry as they leave the birth canal, and parents or the people who are there lift the child up, and the child, the first thing they experience in life is social. Over the period of early development, there are so many interactions with other people, and how people respond to the developing infant, that responsiveness and that back and forth gradually and systematically change what the child does. So the baby sort of learns that by making certain sounds and certain movements early on, that other people will respond to them, particularly the people who are caring for them, will respond in ways that are predictable, that make sense, which then allow the child to respond more predictably, to do the same things in the same circumstances. Like here is a little cutie, and I'm going to show you just a little clip of a video here. The mother interacting with this child. Just a very short clip. Dee, 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 ah! The baby makes that noise. Well, there is this sort of reciprocity, this interaction. Parent does something, child responds. Parent does something, child responds. How the parent responds to that little pleasurable sort of squeal will alter whether the child emits that same squeal again. And eventually that squeal in interactions with other people will be changed into other responses that are more word-like. So in a situation where a baby emits a loud cry when hungry and is fed, the next time this child is hungry, they may be more likely to do that same thing, to cry in the same way, because they are learning to control their environment. I mean, to some extent, almost everything we do helps us control our world in some way. We learn that by picking up the phone, we can talk. By taking a drink of water, we get water. Our behaviors interact with the environment and change the environment around us, and therefore those behaviors that result in things being more adaptive in the immediate moment tend to happen more often. It's a basic principle in life. People do not do things very long in which things do not get better for them. So in this example of the baby crying to be fed, that may be a certain kind of cry that's just a little different from the cry that all parents or most parents seem to pick up on, that when a baby makes a prolonged fussy cry, they may be more likely to have their parent hold them and rock them and help them go to sleep. And the baby's learning, do this, this happens. Do something else happens. And parents learn very quickly to discriminate those behaviors and respond differently depending upon what the baby does. Eventually, the baby may be looking at a toy dog dangled on a mobile in front of them in the crib. And the baby starts making a cooing sound, ooh, ooh, ooh. And the parent then looks at the baby making the cooing sound and says, doggy, woof, woof, doggy, woof, woof. You know, sort of doing those playful kind of interactions that we do with children. And the parent may be smiling broadly. The child then may coo more often in the presence of dog to produce that sound. Later on, the child may start babbling and producing sounds. And then the sounds that match what they have heard their parents say may occur more often. So the baby may say something and said, ooh, ooh, Aggie, Aggie. And Aggie gets a little closer to doggy. R gets a little bit closer to the dog sound that the parent made. Then when the child makes that sound in the presence of the dog, the really exciting interactions are going to occur with the parent, and that behavior will have been selected by the parents to occur more often and will be fun for the child to emit. Here's a little video of a baby.
Here you are.
Wow.
Here you are.
Here it comes again. Eyeball. So the baby has learned in sort of these reciprocal interactions. The baby looks at the block. The mother says, eyeball, and gives the baby the eyeball. And the baby starts walking around in that little walker thing around the center toy thing with the eyeball. That kind of interaction where the child's responsiveness results in language from the mother is likely to promote that child learning to call that particular block an eyeball, because there's a picture of an eyeball on it. And it's not because the picture is an eyeball. It's because the child looked at that arrangement and heard the mother say eyeball at that time. And then the eyeball sounds right when the baby starts gathering or starts producing more vocalizations. They may be more likely to produce something like eyeball in the presence of the eyeball. Here is another example of a baby, not so happy in this case, learning to control the parent pretty closely here. And the parent may engage in helping the child simply because it reduces some of the child's talking in this case.
Oh, did you want to come up here? You want to come up?
Now, in this case, that little fussiness is going to result in the mother picking up the baby. What has happened here is that the baby makes this little fussy noise. The mother says, "You want to come up," and picks the baby up. So that hearing up at the time the baby is picked up makes up go along directly with the good outcome of being closer and supported by mother. There is this direct shaping of the child's vocal behavior by the parent, and it happens on a minute-to-minute basis in interactions with babies. So the baby makes a vocalization. The next time the baby says up or something close to that, they're going to be picked up a lot quicker and with probably a lot more fun interaction from the mother. That shaping of language occurs continuously in child development. Here is a little older infant, and we're going to see the emergence here of some of what I was just talking about, where the first words seem to be acquired. Notice again that in this interaction, that the parent is helping the child learn the language, and that the child's language results in things getting better.
Tickle, dear Tickle. Avery, more tickle? Tickle, dear Tickle. Got tickle.
Now, in that video, the first thing the little girl did was look at her mom and waited. The mother said, "Tickles," and tickled her. Then the baby, with this fun sort of, "Oh, I crawl away from you and you come and get me," happened after the baby said an approximation of tickle a couple times, and resulted in the mother coming and tickling her in a much more exuberant kind of fashion. As you can see here, she's laying on the floor laughing because of the tickles. Those kind of interactions occur so naturally during early childhood development, and parents don't need to be taught to do these things for the most part. Humans have done this to shape their offspring's language for probably hundreds, if not thousands of generations. And the issue becomes, what if the interaction isn't that natural? What happens if you have to teach a child? And I think that we can start breaking down what is going on in these interactions into some of the steps I'm talking about already. How you respond to your child matters. It matters a lot. Children interact with others, and the way people interact with them is what leads to the child learning to talk more effectively. Well-timed, structured responses from parents matter. And it matters not only during this period of early childhood, but throughout a child's life. And for children whose language acquisition is perhaps not at the same clip as another child's, it may even matter more and require more structured and organized approaches to teaching language. Remember, the basic principle here, and I've said this multiple times already, is that we talk in order to get other people to respond. When people respond, it changes what we are likely to do in the future and what we're likely to say. How people respond is important to the child. There was a major study done in 1990s, the early part of the 1990s, and published in 1995 by Betty Hart and Todd Risley. And they worked primarily around in Missouri to complete this study. And what they did was they looked at a fairly large number of children over time, from the period in which they were born through the age of 36 months. And they basically looked at children who were in three different social groups. They looked at children whose families were receiving aid to dependent families, at the time called welfare recipient families. And they also looked at families that were in working class families, and also they looked at children who were in families with professional parents, and had a higher level of income level. And what they found when they looked at these three groups of children, going into the home every month and recording intensive videos, analyzing those videos very carefully to look at both parents, what the parents did and what the child did during the interaction. And the whole time keeping track carefully of vocabulary. How many words did the child use at various points in the study from birth to age 36 months? What they found is that these groups of children seem to, on average, sort themselves out to where the higher SES families, higher socioeconomic status families, generally those children had more words. They had, on average, close to 1,100 words in their vocabulary by age 36 months, whereas the middle class children had only around 700 words in their vocabulary, and children who were in families that were receiving aid to dependent children had a lower average number of words that they were using. They only used a vocabulary of about 500 words. And this graph seems to say, well, there's differences in these cultures or something. And the question is, why? Well, it resulted in some pretty interesting findings, in that if you looked at how long did the parents spend interacting with their children, what was the total number of minutes in which they interacted, the parents in each of those groups basically interacted in patterns that were similar to how many words the children used. When you look at another variable, how many words did the parent use when talking to the child? How much language did the child hear from adults? The pattern was very similar, so that professional families tended to interact longer with their children and talk to them more often, whereas children in more economically challenged circumstances, their parents interacted with them less and said less words to them. What also was interesting in this data is that there were some children from each of the different categories who didn't fit, who, a child from one of the lower SES groups would actually perform better than some of the professional parents. And the data seemed to show pretty clearly that those children who were in any group and outperformed that average group were also the children who heard more language and had more interactions with their immediate family. The reason I'm going over this particular study is that it was one of the first studies to clearly demonstrate the importance of human interaction for children, the importance of talking to your child and interacting with them. And what you say is with your children and how you respond is important. Basically, when you look over the Hart and Risley study, and when you read their summary, what they say is it wasn't only just how much language was used with the child, but also there were differences in the kind of language that was used. For children who developed the greatest vocabulary, their parents used a diversity of words. The tone of voice when the child was talking to their parents was significantly different, and how they responded to the child had a much, speaking in general terms here, a much more supportive kind of tone. Parents in which children had greater vocabularies tended to use more descriptive language. When they guided a child's behavior, they guided the behavior in ways that were also supportive and less demanding. And significantly, when the child did speak, the children with higher levels of vocabulary generally experience more responsiveness from their parents. How their parents responded when the child talked made a huge difference in outcomes in this study. By the way, this study has been replicated, and there are other popular books out there too that describe the effect of the child hearing lots of language and the effect of the importance of environments on language interactions. So I'm going to go over some general suggestions that would be derived from those 5 evidence-based outcomes that Hart and Risley indicate. So first is the diversity of what a child hears. Here we are suggesting that the child learns to say the names of things that they, here what I'm saying is the parent will name things that the child hears and experiences. So if the child is looking at an object in the room, perhaps a plant or a particular toy, the parent will name that toy and say, here is the giraffe, look at the giraffe, and there's the plant, oh, it has leaves. And the parents are responsive to where the child is looking, what they're attending to, and names those things. So the child is hearing the words that correlate with those items so that they are more likely to say that name in the presence of those items. Parents will also do things such as describing what they're doing. Oh, you're going around, here comes the ball. They will narrate as things are happening so that children have the experience of hearing what is, or of experiencing having a lot of various experiences, and then hearing the words that have been shaped within our culture to go along with those activities. This is providing a variety of experiences is important, but those experiences will be most helpful if parents talk about the experiences while the child is experiencing them. This also involves the idea of avoiding asking too many questions in these situations, because a question to a child could be a demand. And if the child hasn't yet acquired the skill, asking the question may become a little bit aversive. That's not to say that you shouldn't ask children questions. Of course, you need to do that, but limiting that in some of your interactions may help the child enjoy language for the sake of hearing it and then be more likely to respond. And I'll show you some videos of this as we go. But how much and what you say should be adjusted to your child's level. And for children with disabilities such as autism, that adjustment should be made in a way where you're staying just a little bit above the child's level, not drastically ahead. Now, a child might like fish, but you don't necessarily need to talk about trout and pickerel and bass and specific kinds of fish early on. Just stick with fish until the child acquires, and then you can talk in more detail. You want to expand how much language the child hears gradually and systematic based on what the child can do. Here's an example of a preschool age child interacting with their parent, and they're playing with a puzzle. And I'll make some comments about this as you see the interaction.
He's ready to go inside.
She says, I've got a caterpillar. And the mother says, you've got a big fat caterpillar. The expansion, the diversity of what the child is hearing is expanded there. The mother uses the term chrysalis, not expecting the child to say it, but just providing an opportunity to hear it and to have it go along with, in the presence of having fun with the caterpillar, the word chrysalis goes along with it. Now, whether you use chrysalis with a child whose vocabulary is perhaps a little more limited than this darling child, it may be a consideration. But that diversity of what a child hears will make it more likely that for this little girl at her level, she may end up saying chrysalis at some point. And then everybody will say, well, how smart she is. And what makes her smart, so to speak, is simply her ability to emit a greater diversity of words in the conditions under which she heard them. And the only way that happens is if she has somebody who cares enough to provide that kind of simple language expansion. If you notice, the parent didn't ask any questions there. She just started singing the song and paused. What did that lead the child to do? To add to the interaction. So that the verbal behavior, the responses that the child is hearing in these interactions represent a set of improving conditions in a very naturalistic way that make it more likely that the child is going to enjoy talking and talk more often. Hearing the language of the parent makes it more likely that those words are going to go along with all the fun that is happening in the interaction. If it isn't fun, things don't happen too often, too much anymore. It's true for children that they're going to do the things that are embedded in experiences that are enjoyable for the most part. That's not to say that they might not also learn language that is highly effective. Sometimes a quick scream at somebody else will get somebody to respond pretty quickly and make things better for you by that person responding so quickly. You have to be careful of those things, those kind of interactions. What the child does, if things get better for them, will occur more often. If singing the spider song results in hearing more of the song or the parent smiling and playing with them, you're going to sing the song more often. But if yelling at the parent gets the parent to say, no, have this, and something good happens, well, that kind of language is also learned and a result of interactions. And sometimes those sharp, kind of strong responses a child emit may compete with the diversity of responses. If I could get what I want simply by yelling, why do I need to do anything else? That's why this next idea is so important. Speaking in a kind and supportive manner, responding to your child in a way that will allow them to hear a tone of voice that is pleasant, does several things. It makes sure that whatever they said results in this pleasant kind of response that makes it more valuable, but it also provides a model that the child may be more likely to replicate in their own language. As I said, you know, when speaking to your child and lots of playful kind of interactions throughout the day, remember to avoid presenting too many questions or too many demands. I am not saying in the course of day-to-day life that you're not going to put demands on your child. Of course, you're going to have to ask your child to do something, and I'll cover that in just a minute. But there are times when you're playing with a child that if you can avoid asking questions and simply respond to what the child said by saying something different, that kind of interaction has been shown to promote further language acquisitions. When you do give a demand, when you do have to ask the child to do something, make sure you're stating it in clear wording that is associated with the action to be done, and keeping the words to a minimum. This next video is sort of a playful interaction involving demands. I'm going to show another video with some other demands in a minute, but here the interaction will involve blocks. The demands are correlated here with play. It's practice for the child following demands that are very playful. Can I have it? Boom, the block comes, and then she bats them together and makes that a pleasant sound. And it's like, what's going to happen next? And she keeps varying the response when he gives the blocks when she asks. This leads to this reciprocal interaction. It becomes very predictable. And then demands stop pretty quickly. She doesn't keep giving demand after demand. And it's so much fun for him. He just wants to see what's going to happen next. Again, you hear that language responsiveness. I'll go get it. You know, so he's hearing more words about what happened. Oh no, it was thrown over there, and she goes and gets it. Using descriptive language, I mentioned, is also a very appropriate strategy. Modeling what you want the child to say, adding a little bit each time your child talks. This is sometimes called the language expansion technique, and I'll show you a video. In this case, the child's going to be talking about this little pony she has there. So washing the tail results in the mother saying, here's the water bucket, and giving the bucket and expanding what the child had brought to the play situation, talking about what the child, adding to what the child had already said. Let's watch a little more because there's some more examples of that in here. So the expansions: brush hair, put on shoes. When you're getting dressed, you do all sorts of dressing kind of stuff. So the shoes are added. So when we're guiding a child's behavior, as I said, of course, in terms of day-to-day life, there are so many routines that we need to follow just to get by, getting dressed in the morning, getting breakfast ready, straightening up the house, getting in the car to go places, even for younger kids, changing diapers, getting ready for activities. What do you need to do? Whatever activity you're doing. And during those times, parents do need to guide children through their behavior. And in guiding the child, it's important that directions be given in a sort of a less demanding way. And when the child is told what to do, and you talk about what's going on when you're doing it, the child may acquire words more quickly. Generally, this is a very important point. When you state directions in positive terms, what I mean by that is not positive in terms of feel-good words, but positive in terms of tell the child what to do rather than what not to do. So you're going to get better results. So instead of saying to the child, don't throw that, you would say, put it down. Telling the child what to do. When they put it down, then you could make things better for the child. You always want to look at how can you phrase things in positive language so that you're telling the child, providing very clear language that sets the expectation for what the child is to do. What is the behavior they need to engage in? The problem with directions that are geared towards stopping a behavior or negatively phrased is it's sort of like it creates a vacuum. You have to tell the child what not to do. It's really hard. Well, what should the child do? You tell them not to do something, but what should they do? You get much better results if you can direct the child to an action, to actually doing things. And that fits with how we are as humans. We as humans tend to be very active. We engage in activities that on an almost constant basis. We're moving, we're talking, we're engaging in all sorts of activities. And I think it's much more effective when we can direct somebody to an action rather than trying to get them to not engage in some action. And generally, for almost every negative direction you give, you can figure a way of phrasing it so that you're telling the child what to do. Then when the child does it, you can set up circumstances in which things get better for the child. Another aspect of giving directions, and an important consideration, is providing models and helping guide the child's compliance. Let's look at a video that incorporates a lot of these considerations I just mentioned. So here you have the child sitting at a table, looking at a book with the TV on, watching a show that she really enjoys. She's in the middle of a really fun activity. And the parent needs her to move to another part of the house for some reason. Now, you don't always need to have a reward as explicit and direct as what's going to be presented, but sometimes it does help. I frequently hear criticisms that, oh, you shouldn't use rewards to teach children to do something because they'll be dependent upon a reward. There was just a story in the local paper where advice was given from a local psychologist in this local paper. The psychologist said, don't do rewards, you'll make them dependent upon rewards. And he used an example where a child started crying. And when the child was crying, the parent said, oh, no, don't cry. We'll go and I'll buy you this if you do that. Well, the problem isn't the reward in that situation. The problem was the timing, where the problem behavior was occurring and something good happened, the promise of a reward. Whereas if the parent did what you're about to see in this video before the crying started, the problem would have been avoided. Basically, as I said earlier, none of us do things very long in which things don't get better for us. The issue is, how do you make things better in a way that it's likely to maintain a child doing what they need to do in those circumstances? So how do you get a child to regularly follow your directions to move? Well, at this point, the adult is going to take some candy, I believe she has, and she's going to say, come on over here. She's going to show the candy before a problem occurs. The child's going to move, and then the child will get some candy after she made the transition. Now, of course, in the future, the parent will not necessarily use the candy. She'll make it interspersed. Sometimes the child gets the candy, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they get some other good thing. Sometimes the activity the child's moving to is fun on its own, and those direct rewards can be faded out over time. But you can't not use rewards because it goes against the nature of things. That when we do stuff, there's a natural reward that occurs. If I want to drink a coffee, I was rewarded by the coffee hitting my mouth. Okay, that the idea here is that if I took that and there was something in there that tasted horrible, I would be less likely to drink from that cup in that situation again in the future. Natural consequences occur all the time, that there are always things that lead to our behavior being more likely because good things have happened. It's just a very practical, simple principle. At any rate, let's watch the video, and you'll see the principles I was just talking about in action.
Maggie, some chocolate chips. I need you to go to the big table. There you go.
And what could have been a major meltdown there in terms of making a transition from a highly preferred activity to a lesser preferred activity was completely avoided because the parent stated the direction. Hey, Maggie, I need you to go to the big table. And she presented some chocolate chips. I think that all of a sudden changes what could have been a very aversive situation. Go to that other table and sit there. You never listen to me. I tell you to do this stuff all the time. Go over there. From a situation that sort of has that kind of tone to one where, oh yeah, I'll go over here. I'll get some good out of it. And it's not like the parent is giving her a mountain of chocolate chips. She probably could even given her just one or two, and it would have worked just as effectively. And eventually, the parent's going to fade out use of that kind of a promise reinforcer. The trick, though, is to not offer the reward after the child has engaged in some kind of problem behavior or escape-oriented behavior, but to offer something that the child enjoys prior to a direction so that the tone of the situation is all of a sudden altered from something that might be problematic to something that is an opportunity. Additionally, responding to a child talking is important. Children who have adults that respond when they speak acquire language quicker, as I have said. The response to the child's comments and questions in a supportive and guiding manner will increase vocabulary. And there is a way of doing this kind of language expansion. It's often the pause and wait technique. You comment on something the child experiences, and then that will likely, if the child enjoyed hearing what you said, if that was valuable to them, will lead to the child saying something else or repeating what you said. This whole framework that I have gone through all revolves around one big point here. The point is, why do we talk at all? Why is it that we communicate? And basically the answer is, as I think I've said already, we talk in order to alter how other people respond to us. We talk and people do things. Our talking then can be classified. We can look at a system of classifying how we talk to other people by the effects it has. We often will use one word in a fashion that gets different results. We can use a single word for lots of different effects. The effects I'm talking about can be considered the consequences of saying a word. The model I'm about to talk about is going to be more relevant to issues related to teaching language and communication skills to children who may not be developing communication skills as effectively as other children. The videos and the discussion I've had so far sort of give some general principles that I think are apropos to our interactions with almost all children. And I think those principles that Hart and Risley spelled out are powerful and are going to be of help to you as parents in working with your children. But sometimes there needs to be a little more detail in how we teach language. We need to become a little more focused in our effort and a little more specific to the skills the child we care about has or has not developed. So that what has been shown in consistent studies of outcomes for students or for children with autism is that the children with the best outcomes are those that have received intensive services that are derived from what is called a behavioral model, looking at what the child does and what circumstances do they do it in, and then systematically teaching the child to do new skills in those circumstances that are more adaptive, that allow them to get better results and are less difficult for the people around them. This is basically an idea that says that if you have a child who's having difficult learning, what you need to do is teach effectively, teach more precisely. And the fact of the matter is, most of us have not been trained to provide precise, effective teaching. As you're bringing your child home from the hospital, you're generally not enrolled in a course for how to teach a language to children who have complex learning issues. And that's okay. And that's why this session is being provided. Hopefully I will provide you with some guidance on how to provide a little bit more specific kind of interventions for your child in the home. This is not meant to be a replacement for however, for the professional assistance you will be receiving from the schools your child is attending in the current situations, either virtually or live, or from any kind of therapeutic services they are being provided by various professionals. It is, however, geared to provide you with some suggestions that I think are consistent with most effective language training models for children, and provide some basic principles that have been shown to be effective. Okay, so that's where we're going to go now. Okay, so first let me go over some background here related to this kind of look at language as being something that is supported by what other people do in response to your talking. Well, one way I could use a particular word is to ask for something. In the situation where I ask for something, somebody usually gives me something. Asking results in getting. And I could use a word like glass, and I could say, or water, let's say. I could say water. And when I say that, somebody comes up and hands me a glass of water. That's one way I could use the word water. I could also use water in another way. I could see some water sitting on the shelf, and I could say, in the presence of seeing the water, I could say, water. And in this case, I'm not looking to get a drink of water. I'm looking to tell you that this is water. And the result of my saying that is you looking at the water or smiling at me or saying, yeah, it is water. If I held this up and I said something like elephant, you would tend to look at me strangely. The person listening to me is not going to respond to that. So using words, so far I've talked about two different ways we use the same word. One, we use the word to ask for what we want. And in another situation, we use the same word to tell somebody something about what we have seen or heard or experienced. They're two different ways of learning to talk. What frequently happens with children with autism is they may learn one way of using a word and may not use the word for other purposes. Another way I could use the word water is somebody could walk into the room and say to me, water. And when they say water, I look up and say, water. I repeat what they have said. That's a totally different set of circumstances. No water present. I don't want water. Somebody spoke to me and said water, and I repeated what they have said. It's another way of using the word in another different set of circumstances. And then there are times where somebody might talk to me and come up to me and say, hey, what are you drinking? Or what do you like to drink? And I say, water. Now that's a little different. This time the person didn't say water at all. They said something, and I said something completely different to them. Notice that my behavior stayed the same in each of these circumstances. I used the same word for different purposes. One, I used water to ask for water. Number two, I used water to tell somebody that I saw water. Number three, somebody said water to me and I said water back to them. I echoed what they said. And in the last situation, somebody asked me something and I provided the same, I said water to them. I answered a question. I responded to somebody else speaking to me. These are four basic speaker skills that are sort of like little molecules of interaction. They often come together in complex ways, but there are many children with autism who may echo everything other people say, but can't answer questions. They may be able to look at things and say what they see. They may be able to label lots of stuff, but they don't know how to ask for what they want. This teaching your child to use language for lots of different functions is important. So I think that we will need to assess and determine how our children are speaking. What do they use language for? Are they able to use language to ask for what they want? Are they able to use language to tell other people what they experience? Are they able to repeat what other people said? And that's a pretty important skill. Are they able to answer questions? Frequently, it looks like children can answer questions, but they may not really be doing so as effectively as we want. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So for instance, just real quick, if somebody said to me, what do you drink? And I said, cup. Well, I do drink from a cup, but that's not what was asked. You asked, what do I drink? And I should have said either coffee or water or some other fluid that I drink. And that's often a result of children not having experiences that are focused. You drink from a cup. You're drinking water. That's where some of those suggestions from Hart and Risley come to play, where the child is hearing words used in the right circumstance. There are also teaching techniques that can build that specific listener skill, which is another aspect of using language. So I've talked about language skills such as requesting, directing other people's attention, saying what somebody else has said, answering questions, but also people will respond to when somebody else is talking by doing something. Get the water. In this case, I'm not going to say water at all. They say get the water, and I reach over and I get the water. that is still another way language can be used. All of these skills come together to help a child speak in a full range of ways, depending upon the circumstance they're in. There are some formal words for these categories that, if you are interested, I would suggest you maybe take a course, such as a Patton. Autism Initiative often offers intensive skill training for teams serving children with autism in the principles of applied behavior analysis, and we go over these terms in detail. That kind of detail is not the point of this talk today. I am simply trying to get across some ideas that will help you build effective communication skills at home. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these specific terms, but it does make it easier to talk about the issues. So if a child wants something, says what they want, and as a result they get it, we call that a mand, asking for what they want, requesting, demanding. If a child sees something and says what it is, or hears something and says, that's a truck, or I hear a bird, that is, that saying what you have experienced is called a tact, and it results in general good stuff from other people. The echoic is repeating what other people have said, and again is a very important skill. I mean, you can't acquire mands and tacts unless you can first echo what other people have said. And then there's the idea of an intraverbal. This means between verbalizations. Somebody says something to you and you say what they have, you say something different from what they said. It's behaving in areas such as answering questions, filling in blanks, word associations. Intraverbals are somebody says something to you and you say something different. And then there's two other skill sets that relate to language acquisition. Listener responding, in which somebody says something to you, and as a result of hearing what somebody else said, you do something. And then imitation skills, where somebody does something and without talking, you do the same thing. Somebody says, do this, and you do the same thing. Imitation, doing what somebody else does. And it's often an important skill related to language. I'm going to show a quick video here that goes over these areas of what are called the verbal operants or operant classes that basically discusses and shows some examples of how these are used in an educational program.
In this segment, we're going to talk about the basic verbal operants.
Aiden's talking to you.
In behavior analysis, language is viewed as something that the child does. It is behavior.
On your names.
Language is affected by antecedents and consequences like all other behavior. A behavior analysis of language allows teachers to use the environment to assist students in communicating more effectively.
We're going to go to the table for a minute. Aaron, give the card to Aiden.
There are four basic verbal operants that have been identified. They are the mand, the tact, the intraverbal, and the echoic.
Yes. You want both of them? Turtle. You want the turtle? Push.
The antecedent for the mand is a motivative operation. Mands are controlled by the child wanting something. Wanting something leads the child to ask for that thing, and mands are reinforced by specific consequences.
You're swinging.
In other words, the child wants something, they say it, and they get it.
Apples and bananas.
Apples and bananas. Okay, we can do apples and bananas.
Listen. What do you hear?
Horn.
That's right, it is a horn.
Tacts are verbal operants that are controlled by sensory antecedents. The child hears, sees, smells, tastes, or feels something.
How does this feel?
Soft.
It is soft. What is it, Sarah? It is a goat.
The consequence for a tact is non-specific. The child does not necessarily get what they say. A common word for tacting is labeling.
Socks and
Shoes.
you fly a
Kite.
The intraverbal and the echoic are very similar verbal operants. Both the echoic and the intraverbal have in the antecedent condition a verbal stimulus.
Bird says choo-choo. Frog says
For the intraverbal, somebody will say something to the student.
Tiyor. An elephant says.
The student will then respond with a verbal response that is different than what was initially said to them. Common names for intraverbal include answering questions,
what's a frog say?
doing word associations, or filling in the blanks.
You write with a Thomas the Roar says the
Intraverbals are reinforced by non-specific consequences.
smell the flowers.
Smell the flowers.
Echoic means echoing or repeating what has been said to you.
bingo.
Bingo.
Tubby time.
Nappy time.
Baby sleeping.
Baby sleep.
In the echoic, the student's response and the antecedent share formal characteristics.
Go eat.
Go eat.
In addition to teaching the primary verbal operants, it is important that we teach skills that do not necessarily involve the student responding as a speaker. The other operants that we focus on teaching include listener responding, imitation, and match to sample.
Touch block. Clap your hands. Shake the maraca.
Find the rabbit. Show me crying. Stand up. Show me jumping. Sit down. Point to the flowers. Show me sneezing. Good job.
In listener responding, the student behaves as a listener. The antecedent for listener responding is a verbal stimulus.
Clap your hand. Rub your belly.
The student then responds by engaging in nonverbal behavior. Listener responding means following directions.
Do this. Do this. Do this one.
Imitation is a key operant for students. Learning to do what other people do is a central part of almost all learning.
Do this. Do this. Do this.
Do this.
In imitation, the antecedent is a nonverbal stimulus. In other words, somebody does something. The student responds by doing the same thing.
Do this. Great. Do this. Great. Here's your stick.
Again, the consequence is nonspecific.
Find this one.
Match to sample involves making comparisons. It is a key skill related to almost all future academic learning for students.
What was same? Find this one. Where does this go? Match.
In match to sample behavior, the antecedent is generally nonverbal.
Where's this one?
I got it.
A common name for match to sample is matching, bringing two things in proximity that share some property.
Find a one like this.
Find this one.
In order to communicate effectively, students must use all of the verbal operants.
Bye. Bye-bye. Bye.
For more information, visit the patent website.
In that video, the examples of the different skill sets were made using instructional settings. Keep in mind that these same principles take place in day-to-day life too. That it's not always, you don't always need cards in front of you to have a man. You don't always need somebody running a very specific interaction to get a man to occur or a tack to occur. But these things occur naturally too. I could be walking down the street and child looks over and sees a vehicle going by, and I say, motorcycle. And the child looks over and says, motorcycle. Well, I'm using an echoic to teach a tact in a very natural situation. When the child is in the store and says, candy, that's a man. These things do not have to be quite as, these types of speaking do not have to be quite as structured as what you saw in the video. I think the advantage of that video is, however, it does break it down into very clear examples that may allow you to get the idea of what each of those type of skill sets look like. So remember, when you're interacting with your child, that timing is everything. You have to speak with your child in times that are sometimes not so easy. There are times where you need to give direction and guide the child during a transition that you don't necessarily have to make, or you don't necessarily want to make, or that you have other things going on. The phone's ringing, and somebody's at the door, and you're trying to get all these things together. It gets to be a lot going on at times in families, and that's natural. And I think at those points, you want to be able to provide guidance and let the child know what they're doing, and follow the dictum that if you can give the child something to do, direct them to something, and make things better when they do it, you're going to have better results. So even though there might be a lot going on, staying calm and not providing undue attention when problem behavior occurs is often very productive. Redirecting the child, taking a breath before you give directions, and not beating yourself up if you do use a louder tone. You know, I think that if that happens, exhale, realize that you've done it, and then next time practice another direction. We are all learning throughout our whole life, and like any skill, getting a child to be an effective speaker is a result of what we do as adults, and that requires us practicing, which is why these techniques that I was talking about, these skill sets of asking for what you want, being able to tell other people what you see, being able to repeat what other people said, these skill sets all involve adult responsiveness to the child's learning. And what I'm going to go over now are simple ways of teaching. And I'm going to cover primarily two ways. One is called man training. How do you teach a child to ask for what they want? And then I'll talk a little bit about ways of helping the child learn new words without them making mistakes. Errorless teaching. Teaching the child what to say, and to say a whole range of things and follow lots of directions in a way that allows the child to learn it as easy as possible. And these techniques we have had implemented in lots of different classrooms, and we've had great success with them. And I think that we've also seen parents use these techniques and have great effects. So let me first get into the idea of man training. Man training basically involves the formula: the child wants it, they say it, and they get it. Okay? You want something, you say it, you get it. So if I need to know what time it is, and I yell out to my darling wife, Cheryl, what time is it? And she yells back, it's 11:30. Well, I wanted to know what time it is. I asked for it, and I got the time. The specific result of asking for what you want in that case was getting information. In another situation, I might have a little child run up to me, and the child says, ball. And they're saying ball in order to get the ball. They say ball, I give them the ball, and they have it. And in the long run, I'm teaching the child in this case to ask for what they want. The issue is, what is this wanting it? What does want it mean? How do we know when somebody wants something? What are the conditions under which wanting it is in effect? You know, what does it mean to want something? Well, I sort of say that, you know, we can look at wanting something as something that's inside the person, but if it's always inside the person, something that comes from within the child, we're not going to be able to do something about it. So basically, wanting something, I'm going to talk about it in this way. When you want something, it means that something in your world has become valuable to you. So that if I want to talk to my colleague, let's say it's my colleague Amiris, and I need to talk to her because I need to tell her something about this session. Oh, what do I do? Oh, in the moment, the phone becomes valuable. And I look for the phone, and I will do things to get the phone, such as look on the table, reach in my pocket, ask my wife, Cheryl, where did I put my phone? The momentary change, the need to make a phone call, momentarily changes the value of phone. It makes me want the phone. Now, this also works for things like food. If I have not had food for a while, food becomes valuable, and I'm more likely to do something to get food. When something is valuable, you become more likely to do something to get it to happen. So, you always want to consider, what does the child want? When you say that, you want to consider, well, what's going on in the world around the child? What makes them, that thing in the moment, become valuable? What are the circumstances that alter the value of things in the moment? So the child watching in that video you saw earlier, watching a preferred TV show, there's no food around. And the parent probably knew the child hasn't had food in a while, so she pulls up a little chocolate. Chocolate is valuable in the moment, and the child will do something to get the chocolate, such as walking over to the table when the parent says, I need you to go to the big table. If the child had just had lots of food, the chocolate may not have been effective. I typically do not go looking for my phone or asking for my phone, or phones aren't valuable to me if I don't need to call somebody. So the conditions we're in alter the value of things. This is important for teaching a child to ask for what they want, because it allows us to manipulate what the child wants in the moment based on the circumstances. So I could say, hey, let's play catch. And there's no ball. And I said, let's play catch. And then I could say to the child, ball. And the child says, ball. And then I pull out the ball. I could manipulate whether the child wants a ball or not. I could teach the child to ask for a carrot at a time when they're hungry. So these changes in value occur under different circumstances, and we can manipulate them. There are survival things that come up, such as food becomes more valuable when you haven't eaten in a while. If you're exercising, water will become more valuable. But then there are also things that become valuable because of things we have learned in our life. Pens become valuable when we have to write. If I give you a dollhouse with no furniture, because you have played with the dollhouse in the past with the furniture, having the dollhouse with no furniture makes the furniture valuable. And this is where that manipulation comes in. I could teach the child to ask for water when they're thirsty. I can teach the child to ask for the furniture when they have the dollhouse and no furniture. The child sitting on the swing who can't yet pump their legs, sitting on the swing makes swinging valuable, so the child may be more inclined to ask for a push. Once something is valuable, you can teach the child to ask for it.
I'm Amiris Tipuglia, consultant with the Autism Initiative at Patton. Demand is a basic type of communication in which the behavior of the speaker specifies the item or event that is to serve as a reinforcer.
But the builder?
The builder.
Through MAN training, students are taught to use effective communication to ask for what they want.
Light.
They learn to use different words to access different items or activities. Autism is defined by qualitative differences in social skills, qualitative differences in communication skills, as well as repetitive stereotype behaviors. Man training helps address all three characteristics of autism. By teaching students to ask for what they want, we address social skills because it increases approaches and social initiations. By learning a wide variety of mans, students learn flexibility. They can access a wide range of reinforcers, which results in reduced repetitive stereotype behaviors. In order to teach the man, teachers need to identify what the student preferences are, set up situations where opportunities will occur to teach it, and then know how they will prompt those mans and how they will fade those prompts so that the students can eventually man independently. In this training, we will provide a format for understanding motivation, procedures for teachers to learn how to establish themselves as valuable sources of reinforcement, procedures to prompt and fade prompts to establish an independent man repertoire, as well as procedures for addressing problems that may arise during man training. We know that teaching a student to ask for what they want is one of the most important skills you can teach. We hope this information is helpful to you, and thank you for watching.
So in that brief introduction, there was a number of things discussed. The idea that we want to manipulate the situation so the child will want something. We want to help the child by prompting them. A prompt is something we do to ensure that the behavior will occur, that the right answer will occur. So when it occurs, we can make things better for the child for emitting that response. In teaching demand, frequently we use what's called an echoic prompt. We tell the person what to say. So if the child wants to play a video game on the phone, I might hold up the phone like this. I see that the child wants the phone in the moment, and I say, phone. And the child says phone back to me. When they say phone, I turn it on for a little while, I then remove it. I bring it back up again with no prompt this time and wait. Child says phone, and then I let them watch whatever it is on the phone. Again, a prompt is something we do to help the child learn to use the right word in the right circumstance. Now, there are some children who can't repeat what you say to them. For those children, we may use a response form such as sign language. I might prompt the child to use the sign for phone in order to ask for the phone. So I hold up the phone, the child wants phone, I show them what they are to do, and then I deliver the phone. Basically, what this training model suggests is that if you're teaching your child at home to ask for what they want, you need to first teach the child that you're a source of good things. So frequently, before I begin actually formally asking the child to say something to me to get what they want, I teach them that I first give them lots of good stuff. Now, this requires some manipulation here, that if there are phones laying all over the place, the child could just run up and get a phone on their own. They never need to ask me. If they have a huge bowl of potato chips in front of them, they don't need to ask me for potato chips. They could just get it on their own. So in terms of teaching the child to ask for what they want, in your home, you're going to have to do a little manipulation to where some of the things that are most valuable to the child, most often, you control them and give them just a little bit. At first, give them just a little bit. Have a chip. Have a chip. And you give them just a little bit, but they're only getting the chips coming through you. Then, of course, you can pause. When the child doesn't immediately get the chip, you can say chip, and the child says chip, and you give them the chip. Or they sign a potato chip. Those are ways of manipulating the motivation. Remember, you have to structure your home so that the child can't get what they want freely. They have to get it through going through you. At first, you're not holding it back. I would not teach a child to ask for a phone by doing this. Say phone, say phone. You don't say it, you're not getting it. That's not what I'm talking about. Don't take that approach. At first, here's the phone. Have some video on the phone. Here's a little more phone. And then pause. The child has learned that coming to you gets what they want easy enough. You got to make it easy enough for the child to get what they want from you. And they have to learn that where they get phones from or where they get good stuff from is from you. So here are some basic steps. Make sure that you know what the child wants in the moment. Make sure that the only way the child can get what they want is by going from you. Make it easy at first for them to get it from you and provide a model so that at first I'm saying, have a chip. I'm saying what I want the child to say when they ask for it. Have another chip. And the child is hearing that. And I'm providing that model. Then I deliver just a little bit. That will keep the motivation strong. That'll keep the child wanting it longer. If I gave them the whole bag of chips, I just made myself useless. Once the child is approaching to take what they want from you, pause and wait. They may say what they want if you have modeled saying the word as you delivered the thing that is valuable to them. If they don't say what it is they want, you can prompt them. You can tell them what to say and then give them a little bit. Remember, if they can't echo you, you may be using sign language. You also want to fade the help you give. Give them more when they ask without help. This is an important consideration. If you provided that prompt, you want to get rid of your prompts over time. And another important consideration here is when you're teaching the child to ask for what they want, use a variety of things. Make sure the child is asking for phone when they want phone, water when they want water, ball when they want ball. Make sure that you're providing a variety of of things that the child can ask for in your teaching. Now, you don't want to overwhelm the child by teaching too many things at one time, but you also don't want to teach only one thing at a time because that may lead to the child learning to ask for everything that they want using that single word. So that you've taught the child to ask for phone and they've learned to say phone to get what they want. When they want water, they may end up saying phone if that's the only word they have used. This is the problem with teaching something like more as a first response too early. It may block acquisition of learning to ask for a variety of things. You're better off providing that model and teaching a variety of things. Remember that, as I said a little while ago, not all children can repeat what they have heard. They might not have the echoic skills. And teaching the echoic skills is critical for teaching a child to be a vocal speaker. You have to be able to repeat fairly accurately what other people have said in order to use vocal speech as a man or as a tactor and interverbal for that matter as well. So that if your child does not learn the ability to echo, repeat, you may need to teach sign language as a first step. For some children, you may need to use other ways of communicating, such as asking for what you want with a voice-generating device or with a picture exchange. Those methods can be effective, but there's some real advantages to sign language. It's completely portable, and you can pair the specific movement for making a sign, such as phone, with the word phone. And this leads to the child learning that I do a variety of things to communicate, a variety of types of responses. Keep in mind that man training is tricky. At first, you may have a child who doesn't ask for what they want at all, but then you take control of the things the child wants, you teach them to ask for what they want, and the child may end up starting to learn that I say what I want and I get it. You might end up with a problem where at first the child can't ask for what they want, then they ask too much, at which point you're going to have to teach skills such as wait, how to accept being told no, how to make transitions. These skills are an important part of the communication repertoire. I'm not going to get into details of teaching this in this particular session of the conference because they're pretty lengthy, but they are covered in other sessions. I think Willa Hosella will touch on them briefly in his session at this conference, and his recorded conference from the 2019 conference available on the National Autism Center's or National Autism Conference website through Penn State. The Willa Hosella session, he covers these protocols pretty clearly, so it might be worth you going back to that archive session and reviewing that. If I was teaching a child to wait, I might present something they want and just pause a second or two. When the child waits, you can have it. I might also teach the child to wait with their hands folded, follow the direction ready hands before I have them wait. And then I gradually increase how long they wait. Successful waiting results in better things happening. If they don't wait, the thing gets removed for a little while. And you systematically teach this very carefully with only very small wait times at first. Here are some things to avoid in language instruction. Avoid pushing the child to use extra words when they're learning to talk in sentences, or to be polite when they're talking. What I'm talking about here is some people think that, well, a child who's 2 years of age typically talks in 2-word utterances. A child who's 3 years of age typically talks in 3-word utterances. So it becomes important then to have the child learn to use more words. Well, anytime we're teaching a child to use more words, just to use more words is probably not going to be effective. You're going to end up with a child who just says things because they're rote phrases. Frequently, when we're teaching children to request, I've heard people say, okay, I want the child to say, I want cookie, please. And then every time they ask for something, they use that expression. I want blank, please. I want blank, please. Sometimes they even ask this way, I want cookie, please. And even though they're using what would be more words and what would be a polite word, such as please, it's not really polite. Remember that my saying cookie is a lot more polite than my saying, I want cookie, please. And the way children learn to use more words is typically by hearing more words. That's where it goes back to what I had said earlier. When the child says cookie, you can say, yeah, you want the cookie. And then when you ask the child for a cookie, you can say, could I have a cookie, please? You can model what the child is going to hear, but don't make them say it. They will eventually use that form on their own. If the child does scream at you and says, cookie, remember, that's an error. And you wouldn't deliver the cookie in that case. You're going to remove the cookie, wait a second, and then tell the child how to say it. Cookie. When the child says it politely, you give it. What's going to get the child to use more words and longer utterances is hearing you use those words as a result of what the child said. So that he's learning different combinations of how to put words together. So try not to drill the child to use rote language. Rather, if the child does use big ball to ask for the big ball, big cookie, reinforce that kind of utterance because it allows what's called combining responses in different ways. So if he learns the concept big, he can use bigger crust cookie, ball, truck, and so forth, and it'll be less rote. So whatever you do, avoid teaching the child to say the same thing in the same wording all the time, but do model appropriate language. So as I'm wrapping up here in this man training section, remember that you can mand for things other than objects. Not every time I ask for something am I asking for an object. Sometimes I'm saying things like, hey, look at me, or can you come here? Where my direct request is for a person to do something. The child can ask for activities. Push on the swing, throw on the ball, head drill, in which somebody will come up and go, brrr, as a result of saying that. There can be all sorts of fun things the child could ask for. You can ask for things needed in daily routines. You have a bowl of pudding and no spoon. You can teach the child to ask for spoon in that circumstance. Getting the child to ask for things from other children is an important consideration. Because sometimes an adult can teach the child to ask for what they want in very controlled situations, but other children don't respond as predictably. And sometimes you need to structure and teach the child specifically how to ask for things from other children. Now, of course, that will require training the other child who the child's going to ask for something from, how to respond, and when to give the thing the other child wants. There are also more complex requests that children learn, such as manding for information. And these are questions like the WH questions. Who is that? Where is my, where is the toy? How do you do it? Those kind of questions are sort of tricky to learn, because what you need to teach the child to value is the information they receive when they ask the question. If the child says, where is the book? And I give them the book, they're learning to say, where is the book, in order to directly get the book. But really, the question, where is the book, should result in the adult providing some information as to the book's location. It's on the shelf. It's in your bedroom. Now, notice that you wouldn't teach the child to mand for these, to ask with these WH questions, until the child has learned that they could go to the room. When they hear in your bedroom, in the bedroom results in the child knowing to go to the bedroom. Or on the shelf, they know what on is. They know what the shelf is. So typically, mand training progresses from asking for things that are directly present, such as phones and dollhouse furniture and cookies and water and so forth, to mands for activities, push, swing, throw, to then asking for things that are missing, the spoon when they don't have the pudding, to eventually, once they have learned the other skills, such as the information that will help them respond appropriately when told the book is on the shelf, that's when you would teach the mands for information. Sequencing these type of training and language experiences are important. And you may need to get professional advice on how that looks for your particular child. Here's an example of some mand training.
In this section, we're going to talk about different types of mands. Block. A mand is a verbal operant that is controlled by motivation and specifies its reinforcement. Common names for the mand are asking, requesting, commanding, demanding, and questioning.
2 blocks.
All mands share one characteristic. In the antecedent condition, the person is motivated to obtain some specific form of reinforcement.
Squeeze, good girl.
Basically, this means that the person wants something. We refer to wanting something as a motivative operation.
Potato Head, Mr. Potato Head. You want a movie? You can watch a movie.
Motivative operations refer to something that has happened in the environment. For instance, if you have not eaten for a while, you're more likely to be hungry, and food will serve as a reinforcer.
Where's my biology book?
In the tote bag.
Information about a location can become valuable when a location is needed in order to find something. One can mand using many different forms. Mands can occur through vocal behavior, through somebody using sign language,
Cookie.
through the use of a picture exchange communication format,
Video game.
through use of augmentative communication, or even by writing.
Winnie the Pooh.
Here's Winnie the Pooh.
Mands can occur for items that are present
Video game.
and for items that are not present.
Winnie the Pooh.
Here's Winnie the Pooh.
People will also ask for things such as attention from another person.
Miss Harry, look. Boots on Olivia.
Yeah, boots are on Olivia.
Or they might ask for a specific action.
Duke!
Additionally, people will ask for things such as information.
Get the watering can.
Where is it?
I think somebody left it in the bathroom.
Pure mands actually occur very rarely. In order to effectively teach the mand, it is important that teachers have a clear understanding of motivative operations.
Remember that the mand isn't the only important language skill a child needs. Remember, we talked about child telling you what other things are, which we call the tact, answering questions, being able to repeat what people said, being able to follow directions. For many of the children who I have worked with who have autism, the kind of experiences I talked about earlier, language expansion and natural opportunities, may not be enough to teach these skills, such as a child increasing their ability to say what they see. That it may take some specific instruction. Now, when I say that, I really want to emphasize that instruction that is designed to help a child learn should never be rote and drill and kill the motivation. It should be fun. And I'm going to try to show some examples of how to do that in the home. The first thing you want to learn, though, is this process of teaching a child to respond without making errors. I mentioned this earlier. The idea of errorless teaching. And errorless teaching is a process to guide the child to learn a new skill without getting it wrong, so that they're more likely to get good results quickly. This involves helping the child to get it right the first time. I talked about prompts. A prompt is something you do to help the child perform the skill you're looking to teach. You then, if you've used a prompt though, you have to set up some practice getting rid of the prompt so the child learns to be independent. We really want to develop independent learners, children who can say things they see on their own, who can answer questions without help, and so forth. For so many children with disabilities, what I have seen happen is they learn to do things only when they're told how to do it, and they become dependent upon prompting. I was just in a restaurant picking up some takeout food yesterday, and there was a child with a disability or actually it was a young adult with a disability who basically would stand there and wait until the father told him what to say. The father would tell him what to say. He would say what he wanted, and then the person would respond. And basically, it looked like this individual had a long history of people telling him what to do, but not a long history of people fading the help they needed to give him. And it was a clear example of that individual's history of how people taught him not being effective, that there is a real need for us to help children learn as efficiently as possible. But then we have to get rid of that help so they do it on their own. Encouraging independence is so important for you as parents. Your role as a parent is not always going to be there for your child. You will not always be there in the world for your child, and you know, you've got to help promote independent learning. So this idea of providing helps and teaching effectively is an important starting point, but then you have to move on to other phases where you help the child learn on their own. Now, if I'm prompting a skill, for instance, if I'm going to teach a child that this is a pencil, I'm going to first start with providing a prompt for the child. I'm going to show this to the child, and I'm going to say, what is it? Pencil. I'm only going to pick that echoic prompt, pencil, if the child can do that quickly and easily. If I can say to the child, say pencil, and they say pencil back to me, that's where I'll use that. If they can't do that, I'm going to need to teach through sign language or some other form. But I'm going to pick a prompt from a known skill. If I'm going to teach a child to answer a question, what do you write with? I'm going to hold this up. The child will say pencil, because they have learned to say the name of this when they see it. My prompt for that one is going to be the known item. And then I'll get rid of it. What do you write with? I'll remove the actual pencil as help for doing it. By the way, that kind of teaching a child to answer questions by using the physical item to get the child to label that item is a more effective prompt because it doesn't require you ever saying it. And it gives the child the right response in the right circumstance. The other person talks and you say something different, not the same thing they've said. It also avoids the issue of if I said, "What do you write with pencil?" The child might say back to me, "What do you write with pencil?" Because how do they know what to repeat and what not to repeat? Okay, so anyway, we're going to pick prompts from known skills. We're going to use an echoic prompt for a tact. We're going to use imitation for a signed tact. We're going to use a tact to teach an intraverbal skill. And for imitation, we might have to physically help the child. For following directions, we may have the child repeat what has been said to them to learn to follow directions as a prompt. As we might also use having the child imitate what we want them to do. So if I said to the child, "Touch your nose," it might look like this. "Touch your nose." And I showed the child what to do. To get rid of my prompt, I would then ask him again, "Touch your nose," without me providing the imitation prompt to help them learn it. We could then transfer the skill, so we prompt the skill. We then quickly try to get rid of the prompt. We transfer it. If the child still needs a little help, I might model a little bit. If I'm saying, "Touch your nose," I might do this. I might not do the full prompt. But if I can get rid of it all the way, it's preferred to do that. "Touch your nose," "touch your nose." I will do that in sequence. And then I'll distract. "Do this, do this." I'll have the child do some other things in between that they know how to do. And then I'll come back to see if they remember. "Touch your nose." And I'll run it again without a prompt so they get it independently after having been distracted.
In this segment, we're going to be talking about errorless teaching procedures.
What is it? Peanut butter.
Peanut butter.
What is it?
Peanut butter.
Tell me an animal in the house.
Cat.
It is a cat. What's this? Yeah, what is this?
Peanut butter.
Awesome.
We use errorless teaching procedures with all items that are being taught. The errorless teaching procedure in intensive teaching has 4 steps: prompt, transfer, distract, and check.
What am I doing? Knocking.
Knocking.
What am I doing?
Knocking.
Clap your hands. What is it?
Doll.
What am I doing?
Knocking.
Errorless teaching starts with an immediate prompt.
Something that drinks milk is a.
Cat.
Something that drinks milk is a.
Cat.
What I'm going to be demonstrating is using the errorless teaching procedure to teach a tact target spoon using an echoic prompt. What is it, spoon?
Spoon.
What is it?
Spoon.
Say happy day.
Happy day.
Do this. What's this one?
Present.
And what's this?
Spoon.
Excellent. The prompt trial ensures that the student will respond correctly. I asked her, "What is it?" and said spoon. And that is what controlled her response at the moment. What is it? Spoon.
Spoon.
What is it? Heart.
Heart.
What is it?
Heart.
The transfer trial allows the student to respond with a faded prompt or with no prompt.
Something that says meow is a.
Cat.
Something that says meow is a.
Cat.
Say tabletop.
Tabletop.
Do this. Something that says meow is a.
Cat.
The transfer trial eliminates the prompt. In this case, I'm taking away the echoic prompt. What is it?
Spoon.
Do this.
Distractor trials are used in order to give the student the opportunity to respond to some easy trials.
Do this. What is it?
Slide.
Touch the toothbrush.
The distractor trials, as their name describes, are used just to put in some distractors of easy skills the student already has acquired. In this case, I already know that the items in these 2 piles are things that are easy for Debbie to respond to. Do this. What's this one?
Present.
Touch the flowers. Something that drinks milk is a. Nice listening.
And then finally, we use the check trial to ensure that the student will be able to respond after some distractor trials. In other words, to see if the student remembers what the response is.
Something that says meow is a.
Cat.
Something that says meow is a.
Cat.
do this. Should be crying. Something that says meow is a
cat. The check trial allows us to assess if the student is able to remember the response of the item taught after the distractors have been presented. What is it?
Spoon.
Excellent. Using errorless teaching procedures will help increase student rate of responding, increase the pace of instruction, reduce problem behavior, and increase rate of acquisition for students.
For more information, visit the Patton website.
That last video basically went over the procedures in a very controlled school-like environment, which probably isn't what it's like at home. But the advantage of that last video is it spells out very clearly the steps that can be used. Remember, you don't always need those cards there. Let me show you Amira Stipuglia, who narrated that last video, with her own daughter at home. And she's going to demonstrate teaching this this teaching process of errorless learning in a natural setting. Now, her daughter has learned many things and has a great vocabulary at this point, so that the focus is on teaching her the names of different plants because she does enjoy the plants. And you'll see the teaching of the word begonia in a very natural setting as it would occur day to day. So Sarah's out watering the plants.
Hey, go ahead and water the plants. Yeah, don't go too close. And it'll get ruined. You're going to ruin it. Stop. Stop the hose. What's this plant? Begonia. Begonia. What's this plant? Begonia. Yeah. Can you pause? What's this part? The leaves. And what's this plant called? Begonia. Go ahead and water your plant.
Amiris wanted her to learn the name of the begonia. So what did she do? She didn't sit there and say, what is it, what is it, what is it? She simply went up, hey, what is it? Begonia. Sarah said begonia. And then Amiris asked her again, what is it, begonia? The transfer trial. She then said, and what's this over here called? Or what part is this? The leaf on the other plant. And Sarah said, leaf. And then she came back and checked. What is it? Begonia. This process can be used in very naturalistic settings to teach all kinds of words. I was glad Amiris didn't get wet with that hose. It looked like Sarah was a little tempted there. Okay, this kind of training. Here's another example of some naturalistic training for a more advanced text for the names of some parts and features.
The examples and procedures provided in previous sections focus on direct instruction of tagging parts and features of items. However, in order for students to develop strong repertoires that they will be able to use in their day-to-day lives, the instructor will need to transfer the skills taught in intensive teaching to a wide range of exemplars, settings, and people in the student's natural environment. To accomplish effective generalization, instructors should select targets that are relevant to the student's day-to-day lives. They should also set up situations outside of the daily lessons that allow the students to practice using the text of parts and features in naturally occurring activities. Nice, good job wetting the towel. That was awesome. Now, what part is this? And what part is this? Can you wash the top? Eventually, instructors will also provide opportunities for the student to use the text of parts and features in interactions with other students. There are times early on in generalization training where it may be necessary for the instructor to use direct teaching of the skills in the natural environment. What is this whole thing? See, what part? Faucet. What part? Go ahead and wet the towel. Good. What part? Faucet.
Okay, so in that video, you saw the teacher teaching the child to say the names of parts and features of things. Actually, there's a lot of learning going on there. the teacher said, what's this whole thing called, the sink? And what part is this? That approach was used to teach the child to be a careful listener. When they hear, what is the whole thing called? They say sink. When they hear what part, they say faucet. You also saw a very naturalistic teaching approach using errorless teaching. The natural environment is a very appropriate place to use these errorless teaching processes. That last video sort of gets us in the direction of talking about teaching more complex language skills that children need to learn. Remember what I said earlier, it's important that we teach the skills in the sequence that allows easiest acquisition. I wouldn't start teaching a child to respond to what is it, what part, what is it doing, until the child can name the item effectively and knows the names of lots of different things. So it doesn't mean that when I say, yeah, it's a pencil, it also has an eraser and a point. I will talk to the child about this before I ever ask him to respond to questions. I will do that language expansion. I'll do that constantly. I'm going to talk to the child, as I mentioned earlier, and say the names of things frequently, particularly about things that are high interest, where the child is more likely to be listening to what I say. Once the child can name this as a pencil and can name lots of other things, then I will start teaching the child to say the right thing in response to the right question. So without this changing, I may say, what is it? The child says pencil. What part is it? Eraser. And the child says eraser. What part? Eraser. And what's the whole thing? Pencil. And what part? Eraser. I will start beginning to teach the child to respond based on not only what is present, but also on what I say. Teaching the child to be a careful listener. That systematic teaching of being a careful listener is important. And there are many ways of doing this. We may want to teach a concept. What is a concept? Well, a concept is basically where we learn to say something is a certain thing based on, does it have must-have characteristics? And what are characteristics that aren't essential, that it can have? Let me explain this just real quickly. So if I presented to you a spoon, and I said, what is it? You'd say spoon, okay? But if I only taught you with one spoon, you might not call another spoon a spoon unless you knew what makes a spoon. And you have to teach lots of examples to get spoon across. This is why you need to, when you're talking to a child, talk to them often and provide lots of examples of what it is you're teaching them. Teaching the child to look at one picture of a spoon and say spoon to that does not mean the child has learned what a spoon is. When you think of it, the technical definition of spoon is a small, shallow, oval, or round bowl that's at the end of a round, long handle that is used for either eating, stirring, or serving spoon. And there's a certain special kind of spoon, such as a ladle, which is used just for scooping. So here, I might use all of these different things to teach spoon, because what the child is going to learn, these are the kind of experiences you can provide your child. Hey, look, this one right up here, this is a spoon. This is a fork. And if the child doesn't learn a spoon from a fork has points on the end that can stab food. The spoon has the bowl-like end. The only way they learn that is by contrasting the two of them. You also will have to present a spoon that is made out of a different material, because that is a can-have attribute. It's not central to a spoon, okay? The spoon could be wood, it could be plastic, it could be metal, it could be made out of all sorts of things. You could also have spoons that are different sizes, different colors. You could have a spoon that's primarily used for scooping food out. You also, though, have to compare those kinds of things with a bowl-like shape that doesn't have a handle. This is how we learn contrast. And eventually you get to see a crazy spoon like this that is made out of wood and has a bend in it, but it's still a bowl-like thing with a handle that's used for scooping. When the child can look at something like that and say spoon, you know they've acquired spoon. how systematic you are about teaching your child to be able to learn these differences between things is important, and takes lots of different experiences, which you as parents can provide. The system and the sequence and the order in which you're teaching these things need to be sort of guided by your child's skill sets and what they have learned. I wouldn't start teaching the child to discriminate between a fork and a bowl and a spoon until the child has first learned to clearly know the name of a couple easy to discriminate spoons. Okay. One of the things that comes up with language is the idea of following directions. And there are certain skills that we can learn that make following directions much easier. What I'm referring to here is the idea of teaching your child to repeat what has been said to them. So that in the situation where I'm asking the child to get the phone and the pencil, I'm going to teach the child to echo what I have said. Can you give me the phone and the pencil? Having your child learn to repeat back to you, phone, pencil, may make it, if they are able to label what they see, may make it more likely that when they look at it and they say phone, pencil, they will select the phone and the pencil from a whole range of things that are sitting next to the child. Common in educational settings is a value for the process of rehearsal, getting the child to say what they're going to do. Okay, here are the steps. First, you get the glass, then you turn on the water, then you put the water, and when the child can say the steps, it becomes much more likely that they're going to follow the direction if they have first learned the names of all the actions and activities to do that. This is an idea called teaching rehearsal skills. And it's sort of involved with a more complex process called joint control, which you don't need to know what that topic means. It's simply the idea of using self-talk, talking to yourself to guide more complicated responses. So how do I use the remote control? Well, first I get the remote, then I point it to where I need it to go, and then I push the middle button. Being able to talk yourself through something might make it more effectively. The first step, however, is being able to repeat what somebody told you to do, or repeat the steps in a process. So when teaching a child to follow a direction, you may want to first tell the child what to do, have them repeat it, and then have them repeat it several times, and then tell them what to do again, and hopefully they'll repeat it while they're going in the process. This set of skills can be taught directly to a child. Remember, though, that this isn't appropriate until the child has learned to say the names of things and until they have a strong set of skills that allows them to repeat what is being said. Here's an example of this in a school situation, again with my friend Alexander. And in this situation, Alexander has been taught to read. So the rehearsal is going to come from him reading the names of things. And it's going to look like this. Let me show it to you.
Alexander, you're going to make hotel toiletry bags. Let's talk about what goes in each bag. What goes in each bag?
Conditioner, washing, soap.
Good. Read it one more time.
Conditioner, washing, soap.
See if you can say them without looking. What goes in each bag?
Conditioner, washing, soap.
All right. Make one bag.
Bag was a little hard to open and he gets a little hung up on stretching it. Needs a reminder here. He reads it. Conditioner, lotion, shampoo, and soap. In they go. This was the training process. He had also learned to say the names. Okay, this is a really powerful video. The reason is because this is a skill that's needed on a job site for somebody who works in a hotel. Alexander actually, because he has learned to complete such tasks like this independently, and he could rehearse what is told to him and then do it, eventually had some employment opportunities in a hotel preparing these kind of toiletries for hotel rooms. But let's look at this in a more natural setting. That was a school setting once again. Let's look at it, what it looks like in the home. Here, Alexander's getting ready to prepare a snack at home.
Get the crackers, bowl, cheese, and salami. Okay, crackers, bowl, cheese, salami.
Crackers, bowl, cheese, salami. Crackers, bowl, cheese, salami. Crackers, bowl, cheese, salami.
Okay, go get the crackers, bowl, cheese, and salami.
Crackers and bowl. Now he goes to the refrigerator. He is probably talking to himself. You can see this in many children where they will actually say cheese, salami.
Okay, go ahead and make your snack.
And as a result, he gets to eat all that good stuff. This technique, frequently we tell a child, go do this, do that. And we expect them to follow the direction. If we just pause and say, what are you going to get me? Remember, you're going to get the blank and the blank. What are you going to get me? And have the child repeat it. That kind of rehearsal is very, very powerful. Teaching children to talk to themselves is a really vital skill that can be taught sequentially, frequently in a structured program. But also you can encourage this at home if the child has the ability to echo and name things, because those two things have to come together in the ability to follow directions. Remember that you don't want to start with asking a child to follow really 4- and 5-part directions. Start with one direction, have them repeat it and do it. Build gradually. The other thing I didn't really talk too much about is what happens when errors occur. If an error occurs, simply correct the child quickly. Don't keep reminding, what are you to do? What do you do? What do you do? Simply tell them what they are to do and have them practice it, and then have them practice it again. Run a transfer trial. So if I said to the child, what is it? And the child says, dog. I'm not going to sit there and say, no, what is it? What is it? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put it down and come back. What is it? Phone. I'm going to teach the error correction very quickly and very calmly, and just help the child and then have them practice independently. So one of the last things I want to talk about today is the idea that you can't go at this stuff alone. I've provided a lot of suggestions as to talking to your child. I've spent some time early on talking about those skills that are related to using naturally occurring language circumstances to expand what they say, talking about using a tone of voice that is encouraging and calm, modeling what you want the child to say, providing a range of experiences, helping the child learn to look at your eyes as a signal of what you're going to do. And then I talked about formal teaching programs, how you could use MAND training to get a child to ask for what they want, getting the child to be able to learn to ask for a whole range and variety of things, and a whole variety of requesting skills. I then spent time going over some basic teaching techniques, ways of helping you teach your child to say things that they've seen or answer questions in the home. I then hinted at what you might be able to do to get some more complex skills going for children who are ready for that skill level. Now, one of the things, though, that I did mention several times is that all of this learning and this ability to teach a child to communicate in the home is not something that you can always go at alone. That it takes a team of people to help children. And there is an interface between what you're helping a child with at home and what is going on in a program such as a school program or a clinical program that may be run with your child. And I think that if you're going to help your child communicate at home, having a nice set of collaborative efforts with your child's teachers and other professionals helping them is critical. And here are some suggestions that may facilitate that type of interaction. You may need to communicate frequently with the teachers and talk about what things you want your child to learn at home and what things are important for them to say. You may encourage teachers to send home lists of things that are being talked about at school or that the child has learned in school. If a child has a program in which specific items are targeted for request or for learning the names of things the child sees, have the teacher send home a list to you of things that have been mastered so that you can help practice them at home. So you can say those words frequently to the child so that you can respond when the child says them independently. And you can work those kind of items into your daily routines. Under this period of COVID-19, where virtual instruction is happening often, there's often an opportunity here for you to work with the teacher and the teacher to help guide you in these specific learning techniques that could be valuable at home. And being open to that kind of interaction is important. Also being able to communicate with the teacher and others helping you as to what is a priority, what isn't a priority, what is possible. Because as parents, I'm making it sound a little bit in this presentation like you only have one child or there's not much else going on. And I don't mean to imply that. How you do this, when you provide these opportunities for children to learn language, is certainly going to interface with issues such as you got to get your other child to do something. You have to teach this at the same time you're keeping other children busy, the same time you're getting the wash done and the house cleaned or getting ready for your work or perhaps doing online work. And it becomes a critical interface. And, you know, sometimes one of the things that happens at school may be valuable at home. Setting up a schedule for when you're going to interact with different children, what is going to be done at what time of day, that sort of sets up an opportunity to make things more predictable. There are some resources related to setting schedules at home that are listed on the patent.net website under the Autism Initiative suggestions for parents during this COVID time. Very helpful suggestions about scheduling and managing those kind of complexities. But working with the school is critical at all times, and developing that collaborative relation so that the school is teaching things that are important for your child to learn in terms of their day-to-day life at home and things they're going to need in the future for independent work. The school would really benefit from knowing things such as what things does this child really like and enjoy at home? What have you taught them at home that they've recently learned that may make things a bit easier for instructional programs at home? And what you see as important for your child to know in terms of skills that may lead to them being more independent at work, future educational settings, or employment. As I've went through this setting, or through this session and have talked about these communication skills, I want to emphasize that I don't have all the answers. I think I've gone over some principles that are powerful and will be of assistance to you. However, in doing so, I've just scratched the surface. There's so much more to learn, which is why I would suggest attending trainings if possible, going over more information that your teachers can provide, checking out the resources that are available on the Patton website, attending other sessions that are geared towards parents that are posted from this conference this year. All these resources are helpful. Knowledge replaces fear. The more you can learn, the better outcomes you're going to have for your child. And, you know, in this process, professionals are real important because they have specific training in ways of adjusting the environment to help children learn that often parents don't have. And the role of the professional can be profound in your life if they're teaching you practical things to do on a day-to-day basis with your child. But I want to say something else, that doesn't take away the importance of your role. You as a parent are the most important, or caregiver, you're the most important person in your child's life. What you do makes a difference. And even though life is complicated and there's a lot to manage, the little things you do, the moment by moment changes you make to help your child learn to communicate effectively can have huge impacts in your child's life down the road. Things are built step by children, and there's nobody more important to accomplish this than you in your child's life. Remember that you may not be able to provide perfect experiences for your child. You may not be able to do the things that your child's teacher does in school in such precise, well-planned ways, but you can, the closer you get, those little steps towards approximation, the more you learn to take a breath before you respond and respond calmly to your child, the more you realize, oh, I should tell the child these things, the more you can encourage the child to rehearse. All of these little things on a moment-to-moment basis build up, they add, they have exponential effects down the road. You know, it's the little things in life that matter. And you as a committed caregiver who loves your child, the more you can do these little things to encourage language developments and realize that it is what happens in life on a minute-to-minute basis that matters. And it's the experiences that will shape your child's learning. You are likely to help promote your child's independence and well-being, not only in the moment, but throughout life. And with that said, I want to thank you for being part of this session and encourage you to tune into many of the other sessions that are going on at this conference that are posted for your review. And I truly wish you the best in your amazingly responsible, complex, and hopefully fun role as being a child to you, as being a parent to your child. Thank you very much. And here is my contact information. If you have other questions about this session and you need to get to me, I'd be very happy to respond. Thank you very, very much.